So I think one of the things that's still missing is a clear understanding of the adaptation needs. We've seen a lot of focus on nationally determined contributions and a focus on mitigation. So countries now, they have an understanding of the kinds of projects they need to see to reach their emission reduction goals, but there's less understanding of what is needed to become adapted to climate change. And what's frightening is that every day those needs are increasing, whereas our mitigation is actually making progress, and in many countries our emissions are going down. Every day we are more exposed to climate change than the day before. So we need to have a good understanding of what those adaptation needs are, so that developed countries and emitters can actually start to then agree to finance some of those activities using instruments like the Adaptation Benefits Mechanism. We have a need or an opportunity to get a host country letter of authorization or letter of approval, and that means that the project is acknowledged as contributing towards the host country's adaptation needs, and that means that the people who finance the project can report their contributions through the enhanced transparency framework. So that then regularizes this contribution towards adaptation projects within the context of the Paris Agreement and contributions made by developing countries to developed countries. So the next stage for us is to raise it's a relatively small amount of money. $20 to $50 million is the kind of funding that we're looking for that would enable us to launch a call for proposals for adaptation projects and then sign contracts to purchase adaptation benefits from those projects. And that would then enable them to access funding to implement the project. In the first instance, because it's a pilot phase, they won't be able to borrow any money, even though they've got a registered project and a purchase agreement, because nobody will know what it is. So we'll have to seed fund and advance and so on. But we want to demonstrate how that mechanism works. And with that, we want to see national governments, parties, but also local governments then taking on an opportunity to regulate and require the private sector to contribute to the cost of adaptation. Not just voluntary actions that we see through CSR activities, but as you see in the mitigation space, we want to see governments requiring emitters to contribute towards the cost of adaptation. So that's where we hope to go with the Adaptation Benefits Mechanism. So other tools that are financing instruments that are of interest and are related to the ABM. One in particular is we're running an initiative called the African Green Banks Initiative. And green banks are very interesting. They're institutions that are set up specifically to lend money to Paris-aligned projects or green projects. But what's interesting about green banks is that they can raise money internationally from places like the Green Climate Fund and from development finance institutions. They can also raise money locally. Governments could raise money through a carbon tax, for example. And they can also tap into money from diaspora. Diaspora are a very interesting source of finance. It's very underutilized. Nigeria gets more diaspora funding every year than it does from its sale of oil, which is a significant amount of money. So instead of diaspora sending money directly back to their families, they can send money to a green bank, they can purchase equity in the green bank, and then reflows from that can come back to their families, and at the same time they start to improve the environment that their families live in. So we think green banks are something that's very interesting, and if we could get the adaptation benefits mechanism off the ground, then a green bank would be the obvious entity to lend money to a project developer who has a registered project and a signed purchase agreement. The other thing that we need to complete that cycle is guarantees. So we need development finance institutions to step up and guarantee the repayments of the loans in the event that money is lent to a project developer and then they are unable to deliver the adaptation benefits. And Swedish IDA, they're very interested in guarantees, and we already have a bookmark with them to access guarantee funds from them in due course. Our dream ultimately would be that there would be global recognition of the instrument. It can be working all through one organization, or it can be replicated across different continents, because, as I said earlier, the adaptation benefits are not fungible. So it doesn't matter if the a Latin American institution hosts the ABM in Latin America, we do the one in Africa, and somebody else does one in Asia. as long as we all talk about the same things and have the same kinds of standards, then it can become a global mechanism. And it's also not just for developing countries, because developed countries also need to raise an awful lot of money to pay towards adaptation. So these kinds of instruments can help.